I'm here with Holt Renfrew, Vice President of Fashion Direction, Barb Atkin. We're just coming from the Christian Dior show, and we're going to Isabelle Marant, and we're in the back of the Holt Renfrew Jag. I'm getting the goods on the season, an exclusive interview. So, Barb, what did you love? You're telling me how much you love London. What was in London that was so great?
It's London's moment. We haven't seen London as strong and as vibrant as we have, probably in that kind of 80s moment when people were kind of coming on. We were running there to see McQueen do his first thing underground, and Galliano was just a startup name, and you're starting to feel this vibe in the city. And fashion's gone to a point where we have the big mega brands, we know them, and we need a grassroots happening. And London is the place that really is the birth of it all. And you feel it in the air, whether it's proud to have, all those great Canadians from Todd Lim to Erdem that is there, or to Mark Fast kind of doing something really exciting, to Christopher Kane that's just really becoming the next big brand and so exciting. It was just a day after day of newness, excitement, but even more than just the fashion. Being in London and seeing the great new stores, the concepts that are coming out. The interesting part about London is that the girls dress up. It's not a North American culture where they're so casual that they want jeans. No, they wouldn't think of wearing jeans to a restaurant. And it's so great for business when people dress up and feel good. It keeps that retail door evolving and revolving. And that was the excitement coming out of London.
Now, here in Paris, we're seeing a lot of we're seeing some British street style influences, like at Balenciaga and Balmain.
Totally.
Is that happening in London, or is it something that Paris has kind of grasped onto and embraced?
No, it was very unique to Paris, which I thought was interesting. But, if you think back to the roots of, I think of the great roots of Paris and the avant-garde and the l'enfant terrible, and the moment, when Brigitte Bardot on her motorcycle and her cap, and if we think about what Chanel did, the last exit of the couture shows, kind of taking that motorcycle, that is actually the spirit of the youth and rebelliousness of Paris in the streets, and we sometimes associate that with Britain, which is interesting, but it's very much a Paris vibe. And we're living through the 70s, and this is where we are embracing now. Our lens is really focused on that time. And that early 70s in particular, where I think that fashion was so embracive and so much about personal choice, because it was a story of Yves Saint Laurent and his beautiful suits and his man-tailored suits, but he also did the beautiful Moroccan story and his peasants. He did that wonderful 70s color palette that we're seeing today. But we also had that punk movement and the Sex Pistols starting up, and we had safety pins and black leather, and boy meets girl, and boy falls in love with boy, and girl falls in love with girl, and all that mix that was happening in the clubs at the time is now alive, but with the year 2011 spin on it, and I think that's where we're heading right now.
So what would be the 2011 spin? What makes it different? And why can we not just go to the vintage store and buy, the old 70s stuff? What's new about it this time?
The beauty is that you probably could go to the 70s and get the authentic pieces, but I think that we're seeing a different kind of fabrication. And I think that makes a big difference. I mean, if you look at what something like Balenciaga does, what Nicolas Ghosquier does, those fabrics could never be copied nor bought anywhere. As a matter of fact, if you could even find these pieces one day in the next 100 years, you'd be lucky. You're seeing fabrications that have snapped into this modern world with new technology and smart fabrications. And of course, the fit is always a lot different. And I think we fine-tuned the craftsmanship so that it has a refinement, that it's not street, it's quite refined, but it takes its inspiration from that moment in time. It's a real, it's interesting. Marc Jacobs set off that trend way back in New York when we started seeing that in September, from his palette on. And that continued right through, actually, London, and really strongly in Milan. And we're still seeing it here. A time, to embrace the short with the long, the great flared pant. A pant that every woman will want to own, because that flared pant makes your legs look 6 feet tall, even if you're 2'4". And the new shoe. The new shoe that has that chunky heel but a single sole, mixing that kind of chunky heel and that single sole, moving away from that really extreme platform It adds this newness, that new longer length that is becoming so important. I mean, girls haven't worn a below-the-knee, mid-calf length skirt for a long, long time, and it's actually looking sexy.
That is going to be the dress for next spring, isn't it?
It's going to be it. It's going to be it. And how you redefine sexy to look at what we're seeing coming off the runway, understand how to make it work for everybody. I think sitting at what Raf did for Jill Sander, incredible show, taking all the great essentials of the 20th century and spinning it out in a new way for the 21st century, and then looking at what Dries did. I actually think Jill, Raf and Dries have the same kind of sensibility, no nonsense clothes, but very compelling to so many women, and democratic in sizes, which is we're hearing a customer yell out, give me something more than 2s and 4s. Well, you're going to see that in a Dries collection, for example.
What's with all that? There's a lot of Japanese influences this season. Where's that coming from?
Well, I think that the Western world has always been inspired completely by Eastern philosophy and clothing. And I think it's taking the roots of Western clothing and taking beautiful elements of Eastern kimono, place flowers, even the wonderful colorations we see in, oriental lanterns and the blue and white we see, just kind of bringing that in for a global view of the world. We are beyond globalization. We are a fused culture, and it means really recognizing all those indigenous pieces from these cultures that we can introduce into our wardrobe. When the fashion world's eyes get jarred immediately, they know they're onto something. I always say that if you look at something you don't quite understand it, and you actually might say, that's kind of ugly, then chances are it's going to be the next big thing. And you need to adjust. It's always about adjusting your eye. I mean, this is the world that takes people onto the future. We move civilizations of people into a new way of dressing that defines a decade or defines that year. And it's fun. It's fun to create the new costumes for the 21st century. If we could all live in color, a mix of color, would that be a happier place? I always think we looked at the streets today, I'm looking at the streets and I'm seeing black, beige, and here I am in my black and white, which is my travel uniform. But maybe next season I'll be wearing cobalt blue and bright red, and maybe I'll mix in that orange and a little bit of hot pink, and it will be fun.
Absolutely. Okay, it looks like we're almost here at Isabel Marant. Thank you so much for bringing us up to speed on spring 2011.